tell you about why we left.
Okay.
If you want to get right to the point. It was a very, very tiny Catholic community, and we moved from Taylor Avenue, which is just basic Bronx. They built this 18-story building like half a mile away from where we grew up. It was right next to the Cross Bronx Expressway. In fact, when you drive by, you can see our apartment. And it was called Noble Mansion. And then the rent was $100 a month. I remember that.
Rent was $220 in our second apartment. It was like $180 the first apartment.
And that was a lot.
$220 for 3-bedroom, $180.
I bet you it's $2,000 now minimum.
It's $2,200.
Yeah.
I looked it up.
On Noble Avenue, we ended up with 3 bedrooms. It was nice. That big, tall building. You
Oh,
see
that's
off the
Noble
Cross
Avenue.
Bronx. Yeah, we ended up with 3 bedrooms and a swimming pool. That was a great house, but that was a little further from Taylor.
And I do remember there was mostly white people. The Bronx was almost all white people, but there was also a Latino element that was coming in. But the white people that were there were like trailer park trash, like just white people that were like cycling down in poverty. One event that happened was that we lived on the 16th floor of our building.
The reason why we moved out of the Bronx, remember when we moved out?
Drugs.
Drugs. Drugs.
And for some reason, I walked up the stairs from school one night, and on the 14th floor, right in our landing, were 2 guys shooting up. One guy was passed out, and it was really, they had the rubber thing that they, whatever they do, to tighten up their arm, and it was right next to our apartment. It was like open the door and go in the hallway, and it was right there. So I was like, Mom! And there were just like 3 like heroin addicts just sitting there shooting up right next to our apartment.
Mommy Heaney in the hallway. We came home one day and there was 2 guys shooting up heroin.
Frankie Dennis and his
And she
friend.
went inside and got a meat cleaver and came out and said to the guys, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to kill you. And they left. And then we moved. Do you remember that, Suzanne?
What?
The heroin in the,
That's why we moved.
yeah, 16C.
Frankie Dennis was the
With
guy.
the meat cleaver.
So you just said
Yeah.
Frankie Dennis.
Me and Suzanne are on the same page.
You think the old lady was going to use it on the guy too and they stabbed him in the head or no way?
And there were like little things that were starting to happen. And then there was a black kid named Corey in our house. It was like not too many blacks, but it was supposedly like an upwardly mobile place to live. And Dad was president of the building. His vice president was some black guy, and like it was like for some reason it was like cool because Dad had a black friend because we really didn't know any black people.
Kids who were doing drugs were white.
Let's see. My best friend was Eric Davis. He was
Black kid.
And he lived in 8C, right?
This tiny house, but Nicole and I shared a bedroom, and since we are 10 years apart, she was a baby, and I was in a canopy bed that my Nana bought me. Our apartment in Noble Mansion was big. It was a 3-bedroom apartment in a new building, so it was like a nice apartment. And there was a balcony where we used to put Nicole out, which sounds like it's like child abuse, but we just put her out in the carriage. And that's where she'd hang out.
Like for fresh air, I was put out there. I don't remember.
You actually went alive.
One thing.
You went
about
alive,
the
were you?
Bronx.
But this kid Corey taught me how to hotwire a car. Because our car was in the parking lot. We had a red Impala, and we had a parking space number 100. It was a really nice red Impala. So at the time, the way that you could hotwire a car was by pushing 2 wires together, and you have a screwdriver, and you jam it in and turn the ignition on. And one time we were going to my grandmother's house for a holiday, Easter or probably Thanksgiving or something. And the car didn't start. I said, "Oh, I'll do it, Dad. I'll start it." He's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "You got a screwdriver?" And he was like, "The golden girl." He was horrified that I knew how to hotwire a car. He had never been alone in the apartment without our parents. We all lived in one bedroom. There was a bunk bed and there was a trundle bed. And Mom and Dad went to the hospital. And our neighbor Charles, he was so pissed that he had to like stay up all night with these stupid kids. So we were jumping on the beds, throwing the mattresses off the top. It was like all this. Michael set fire to the New York Giants rug. And then it was like, we went insane when there wasn't any familial, parental influence. I remember something.
You also set fire to the rug and lied.
You set fire to the Giants rug or something?
Whoa! Let's not go back that far.
And lied.
I always lie.
Such a pyromaniac. It was a football-shaped rug that had New York Giants on it. He just set it on fire.
I'm gonna ask him about that.
The night, I think it was the night Nicole was born.
I'm gonna ask
He set other things on fire too. He had a pyro problem. Ask him if he was a pyro. There's a lot he won't tell you.
When Sue ratted us out like a cop.
We got beaten to the point
Like we were fishing with the Zebcos of trying to get hats, and she's like,
we were beaten and we laughed because it was like
Mom.
this. It was like,
"They're fishing."
When my brothers were caught fishing out the window, from the 16th floor to the ground, that was like they almost went out the window. They were so far out, and I wasn't trying to save their life. I was trying to be like a smarty, like a tattletale. My mother and her sister were in the other room. I said, "Mom, the boys are fishing out the window." She came in, she crept in like a panther. They were both all the way out the window, 16th floor, fishing with a plastic fishing rod, trying to get people's hats off their head or something, or trying to grab things down because the lobby was right below. They were almost all the way out the window. My mother came in, she was like, one of the big cats, grabbed them both by their pants, pulled them in, sat them down, went into the kitchen, got the wooden spoon, and did beat them in tears. She was crying so hard. Oh my God. And I was like, Mom's like, if it wasn't for your sister, and I knew my own motives, I know were just to be like a tattletale. Like I didn't see the danger, but they were seeing the danger of living there. And then it was like, then there's a lot of that lace curtain Irish, there's like Latino people coming in. They call them spics or whatever they would call them back then. And it was time for us to go in a lot of ways. As a very, very good student, I was tapped out with what they could teach me. And the school was, we had gym once every 2 weeks, art class once every 2 weeks. The science was like, it was time to go.
we went to Garden City, Long Island.
Yeah, now for something completely different.
Something completely different. We went from heroin to cocaine. It was easy.
Edit that.
And now we all snort cocaine instead. We don't do heroin anymore.
Moved to a nice town. The kids had good schooling and they grew up. They were happy. But you're not going to escape problems, that's for sure. But that kind of like freaked Roy out completely. Oh no, there was syringes on the windowsill. He was like wanting to be out the door the next day.
Tough guy mother. Didn't like the heroin. Goodbye.
Well, they moved out soon after. After we moved, everybody, right? Mary Jo and Maddie
The
and
White Flight, the Burgess.
the Burges moved to Coram. Maddie and Mary Jo moved to East Meadow.
Did we
What
go
were
back
those?
and check that building out like 20 years ago? We drove in there?
I was there like recently.
I haven't been
Is
there
it
in a long
bad or
time.
good?
The building sold for $12.8 million.
That's not that bad. I mean, it was pretty nice. though.
$12.8 for the whole building. It's a great price.
Wow.
Recently.
What's it look like when you're inside now?
Same.
Is it like middle class people or is it like
It's like, I think it's middle class, yeah.
Yeah. Lower middle class.
My father was very upwardly mobile guy. He was a striver. He went to school at night, and he wanted to be a bigger shot than you could be in the Bronx. So he went to college at night. I kind of remember that. And was making enough money where they could buy a house on Long Island, because they had my dad had some friends in the printing business who we used to go out and visit. And I think the parents were taking her on us kind of like go-see trips to see where would be cool places to live. And we went to this town called Garden City. And it was like, oh my God. Because it was so wealthy and the houses were huge. And I know my dad wanted to live there. Like, he really, there was a bit of a snobbery to my father. He was very much a striver. He also liked fine things. He definitely lived beyond his means. But all I know is that we moved in the course of like 3 weeks. We were in Garden City. And I remember Christopher and Michael and I driving down Weatherall Road from Old Country, very wide street, middle of summer, so it was when all the trees would meet in the middle, like that. And we were like, I remember the three of us looking at each other like, what is this? Trees? I mean, we were really blown away that the trees met in the middle. Because when we would go to get, if it was hot out, we would either open up a fire hydrant and spray it out, and the kids would play under it, or they had these sprinklers in the concrete parks that would come on.
Grandma Sue left me in the elevator, I know that. She put the groceries in and she turned around and left me in the elevator, and she could watch it going up 16 floors, and I was
By the
in
way,
a
that
stroller.
was not an accident.
In a stroller, in the elevator.
You were like the
You
kid.
didn't hear, by the way?
You were the kid that, like, you were like the last kid. Like, can we lose this kid somehow?
Yeah, what happened?
Out of expense.
You were the accident,
Three
or like
kids,
No, I was the only one that was planned.
8 years apart.
they were hoping that someone would actually take you.
I'm trying to think if I can remember anything. You should remember something from being 2. I remember the drapes. I remember those dark green drapes. That's
Remember the
it.
wooden spoon? Remember that? We got beaten by the wooden spoon.
There's a lot of people who have a lot of good sentimental feelings about it there, and I actually kind of do too. I'm the most Catholic of my family because I lasted the longest, 6 years, in St. Anthony's school. So it was very traditional. Celebrating, Holy Week was a big deal. I remember, throwing rose petals down into church, and then going to confession, having to go to church every Friday, and very Irish, as I said. There were some Italian people too, but it was, a couple of Jews in our neighborhood, and they were always called the smart ones. But they all left. And actually right now, Michael and I drove through maybe 20 years ago, and everything looked so small, but it didn't look bad. It was very tidy, and I was so happy to see. Everything looked so small. The streets were so small. It's like going back to your junior high, and you're like, oh my God. But it was tidy, and I'm glad, and I was happy to see that our neighborhood was still intact. That it wasn't a slum by any means. It was just an entirely different population of people. Latino. A couple Irish left. They'll die off. It's a Latino neighborhood now. That's the way it goes. That's it. That's my story.